everybody. Welcome to the Rope of Hope. I am your host, Kimberly Plesia. Tonight, I am joined by Skip Mondragon. He is pretty amazing. I've so enjoyed getting to speak with him and learning about him. And he is going to be sharing some of his very personal experiences with PTSD and depression. Before we jump into that, though, Skip, I just want to say thank you for being here. And why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Kimberly. Well, again, I'm Skip Mondragon. I'm a physician by trade. I spent 26 years in the Army. I have 5 adult children, and thank the Lord, they are all employed and independent. Haven't come back to roost. 4 amazing grandchildren, but my crowning glory is my sweetheart of 40 years, my wife, Sherry.
Oh, well, congratulations on 40 years. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
I am a grandparent as well. Isn't grandparent life amazing?
Yeah, it's the best.
Better than being a mom.
It's easier. It's easier.
It really
than being
is.
a parent. It's easier.
It really is. You get to spoil them.
Yep.
Just fill them full of sugar and then send them home. Well, I'm going to kind of let you take the reins at this point and share your story.
Thank you, Kimberly. In my last 18 months in the Army, I began to circle down the brink. I began to experience insomnia that became progressively worse. I began to have these negative thoughts. You don't deserve to be a colonel. You're a failure. You've let the Army down. You've let your family down. You've let your department down. My insomnia got worse. It started off falling asleep 45 minutes to an hour. Then it was 2 hours a day, 3, 4. It got progressively worse to the point where I would long for 1 to 2 hours of uninterrupted sleep when it got to be its worst. My mood began to darken. I began to withdraw from others. I lost my passion in things that I'm normally passionate about. Wrestling. I've been involved with the sport of wrestling for over 50 years. All things related to wrestling. Watching wrestling, coaching wrestling, reading about wrestling. I lost all passion about wrestling. I became indecisive. I lost my confidence. All these things were going on. And then I began to have trouble with my thinking. My cognition was off. I couldn't remember what I read 5 minutes earlier. Was that I read? Huh? Remembering the name of a medication, remember the name of the person I knew well. These things were going on. I thought I was suffering from early onset dementia. I had requested testing because I thought I was becoming demented. Thankfully, that was not the case. They attributed it to the insomnia, the stress of preparing to leave the Army. So all these things were going on. And then my aches and pains, things only got worse when I had 3 surgeries in less than 7 months. And why? Because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was taking care of everybody else, and I had delayed taking care of myself. And now time is short, and I needed to get some things done before I left the Army. But it culminated the day I got up, and it had been a restless night again, like so many others. Got up as I normally would about 5:15 in the morning, quickly dressed, groomed, had a short devotions. My wife fixed me a nice healthy breakfast as she normally did. And before I left, we had this tradition, hold one another, pray for one another. And we have this tradition of a 10-second kiss before I leave the house. But we did that. She hands me my lunch. She hands me my thermos. I'm out the door quickly, out to Fort Gordon, Georgia, Eisenhower Army Medical Center. Get there early. Nobody else is even on the floor. I go down this dark, well, it's not dark, but it's a stark, I should say, hallway. I can remember, the shiny floors, the lights, it's quiet. All the doors are locked. And I get down to my corner office, unlock the outer door, put my lunch away in the refrigerator there in my secretary's office, unlock my door after all the lights are on. And then as I turn into my office, I closed the door. I turned off the lights. I locked that door. Went over and closed the blinds. Turned off my phones. And then I curled up under my desk in a fetal position. For 4 hours, I asked myself, Skip, what are you doing? Skip, what happened to you? How did you get here? And I'm rolling this over in my mind, asking myself, what happened? See, I'm a tough guy, I'm telling myself. I'm a colonel. I spent 37 months deployed, 30 months in combat zones. I'm a national wrestling champion. I'm a tough guy. What happened? And I began to replay all these things that had happened in that past year or so. And then I began slowly to put those pieces together. The insomnia, withdrawal, the loss of confidence, the indecision, thinking. And very slowly, finally, I could see it. And I told myself, Skip, you're depressed. Go get help. That was April 17th, 2014. And that was the turning day.
So what did help look like for you?
I called, well, initially I went down to my primary care clinic and I asked for an appointment with the clinical psychologist associated with the clinic. They said, well, he can see you early next week. And so I booked an appointment, went back up to my office, and I thought, well, I don't want to wait till next week. So I called the chief of behavioral health. Helped. I was a colonel, chief of my department. So I called another chief and said, hey, Joe, this is what's going on. Can you arrange for me to see somebody? So I said, sure, Skip, I can do that for you. And that afternoon, I had an appointment to see a clinical psychologist. So it was that initial evaluation. She did a very thorough evaluation, including assessing me for suicide. And at each subsequent appointment that I had with my providers, they would always assess for suicidality. Am I struggling with suicidal thoughts? But she did a very thorough evaluation. And at the end of the evaluation, she said, yes, this is major depression. And my chief and I have been talking, and we believe there's a therapist that you can work very effectively. We think he and you can work very effectively together. And we've set up that appointment starting next week. So I begin to see then Lieutenant Colonel Michael Perry the next week. And for each week thereafter, for a period of several months, I was seeing Mike weekly for therapy. And then I went to see my primary care physician. She did a thorough evaluation. And after I'd been seeing Mike about a month or so, and he said, I think you need to go see your primary care provider. We did that. She wanted to make sure nothing else was going on medically, because there's other things, low thyroid, diabetes, other things that can contribute to depression. And so she evaluated me and came back and said, Dr. Mondragon, I don't find anything else here. I think you should be on medication. What do you think? I said, I think so too. So she started medication, and then later I was seeing a psychiatrist who further adjusted those medications. So that's what help looked like for me. in terms of professional help.
So I'm going to ask a personal question.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Thankfully, no. I had virtually every major symptom of depression, but thank goodness that was not something that I struggled with.
Thank God. So after you started down the process of therapy and medication,
Mm-hmm.
were you starting to see like a light at the end of the tunnel for this?
It was a slow and painful process, Kimberly. It was one step forward, two back, two forward, one back. It was a rocky road. It was painful. I remember there were times sitting on the edge of the bed with my sweetheart, tears streaming down my face. We're there holding hands, and I'd cry and say, honey, I'm going to get better. Honey, it's not always going to be like this. But it was a painful process because one of the things that happened is you have those horrible negative thoughts. You're a fake. You don't deserve to be a colonel. You've let your family down. You've let the army down. Who's going to want to hire you? And those thoughts were like this endless play loop that had just beat me up for all those months. And I'd lost my confidence. I became indecisive. And the therapy that I was involved with is called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's to change your thinking. And that's what Mike Perry was helping me with. The drugs were there to help get my mood from being in the toilet. And that's interesting that you said, could you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Because I would describe this sense of depression because it's this heaviness. It's like this dark, heavy cloud descends upon you. It's just palpable heaviness. The color in your life is gone. It's walking through life in black and white. But I describe it like being in this dark, deep pit with my head in a fog, slogging through a foot of mud, and I can see at the end, long tunnel, a little speck of light. That's what it felt like when I was depressed. And going to see and getting help, it was like this sense of, oh, I'm not in this alone. I've been struggling with this. It was like wrestling this 250-pound behemoth, this powerful foe that had me on my back, and no matter how hard I struggled and tried, I could not get up. And so it was a relief to finally say, I need help. I can't struggle any longer.
So how did this affect your marriage?
Sherry's view of me at this point had always been the strong, hard-charging, decisive man. And this process was insidious. It was slow and progressive. And I'm a very private person. And she didn't realize how bad. She knew the sleep was horrible, but all these other things, she didn't realize how much I was struggling. And only until I really, really got bad. And then she was wondering things like, afterwards she said, I wondered where your get up and go had gone. So it took its toll there because my indecision and so forth, now there were some things that she was having to take care of regarding household decisions and so forth. And that being our last year in the Army, we were living in Augusta, Georgia. We were planning on retiring back to Texas to be closer to kids and grandkids, preparations to sell the house, all these things, working with a realtor. We're having to make these decisions. And, meanwhile, I'm undergoing therapy. So it was a difficult time with that. And so I can only thank my sweetie because she's been through thick and thin for me, through medical school, residency, raising kids, the deployments and the difficulties we faced in the Army, and then, of course, with this illness, and always stood by me. I tell people I had the A team taking care of me in terms of professionally, that took care of me from medical care, but I also had what I call my F3, who helped take care of me, my family, my friends, and my faith. And without all of them, I would not have recovered.
So what was that moment that you felt like, this is working and I'm getting better?
Ooh. I was still struggling about 6 weeks into my therapy, and my little brother, Chris, my youngest brother, I have 4 younger brothers, he called me and he was very excited. He had been to a Bible study with Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham, who had visited some men there in Raleigh, North Carolina, and taught a Bible study on suffering. And the gist of it was, he talked about the suffering of Christ on the cross. And he shared with these men, saying, if Christ suffered so brutally on that cross for us, why, especially as Western Christians, do we think we should be immune from suffering? And Chris shared that with me, and it caught me up short. Because up to that point, throughout those months, starting back in the summer of 2013, up to when I went to get help, and now into those first several weeks of treatment, my prayers have been, Lord, please, please, please deliver me from this darkness. And after Chris shared with me, it brought to my remembrance a verse in the book of Philippians, written by the Apostle Paul. And in chapter 3, verse 10, Paul wrote, "Oh, that I might know him," referring to Christ, "and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering." I knew that verse. I knew it well. I had prayed that verse many, 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 many times over the course of my walk with Christ. But in my suffering, what did I want? Deliverance. And over the course of 2 days, my prayers then shifted from, Lord, please deliver me, to, Lord, what would you have me learn, and how might I use this to help others? And with that shift in my prayers, there was an epiphany with me. There was this understanding, there was this sense, and I didn't understand a lot of that. I knew something had happened and I understood something, but a lot of this wasn't real clear exactly how or what until retrospectively, as I had a lot more reflection on it. But at that point, I understood this. I understood that I was going to have to tell my story, that I needed to tell my story. And I had this sense that, okay, suffering, and I understood suffering is part of life. And if I have to suffer, God is with me. And as I reflected more on it, what I understood was that if I had to continue with that suffering, I could bear it. I didn't want to. Believe you me, nobody wants to be in that deep, dark pit. But I understood that if I needed to, I could, because I knew God was with me. Because see, at that point, for all those months, it felt like God was so distant, that my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. I knew he was there, but I had no sense that he was there. But when I prayed that, changed those prayers, there was that powerful sense. I knew that I knew that I knew God was here, that he was so close, that he understood my suffering, and that if I had to continue to walk with that depression, that I could do it, but that I needed to tell my story. that I was compelled to tell my story. And so I began to write down the lessons I had learned and the lessons I was learning regarding my depression, with the intent that I was going to share those at some point. And so before I left the Army, I was able to do that with the hospital staff there at Eisenhower Army Medical Center at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And that's in Augusta, Georgia. So the commander, I had shared my story with the command staff, what was going on after I sought treatment. And then later I mentioned I would like to be able to share with the staff. So on a day that they call the Officer Professional Day, where they do some training, the commander gave me a morning and afternoon session. So I had about an hour each time in the hospital auditorium to share my story, what happened, lessons that I learned, and to encourage others who are struggling. Don't suffer in silence. If you're struggling, go get help. Now, see, I'm a tough guy. So I had this platform I could speak from. I was well known in the hospital. I'm one of the senior colonels in the hospital. I'm a national wrestling champion. I'd been deployed 37 months, 30 months in combat zone. So I had this powerful platform from which to speak. And so I'm standing up there telling them what happened to me and encourage them, don't suffer in silence. If you're struggling, go get help. And talking about the wonderful care that I received. I also made 3 public service announcements with the Department of the Army regarding mental health, suicide prevention, and telling a little bit about my story. And that then later, that became the genesis of my book, Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. But that was the pivotal turning point right there.
You know, part of what you just said actually brought to mind a poem that I remember from when I was a child, called Footprints. And it talks about how this man, looked back at his life. And there were times where he could see 2 sets of footprints and times when he could see only one. And he asked Jesus, why weren't you with me during those times? And Jesus's response was, those were the rough times in your life. That's when I carried you.
Yes.
And that's immediately what came to mind when you were telling me. Now, as far as your book, we're going to put a post on the Facebook page. So if anybody is interested in purchasing this book, there will be a link for that on the Facebook page, either tonight or tomorrow. So you can click on that link to purchase this book. I have been able to start reading through it a little bit, and it really is, it's so worthwhile. So I highly encourage everybody to pick it up. Skip, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I do have one final question for you.
Yes.
I ask this of every guest that comes on my show. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. What in your lifetime is the most inspirational thing that's ever been said to you?
The most inspirational thing that's ever been said to me were the words of my little grandma, my abuelita, my maternal grandmother. She stood about 4'10", maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. She spoke in Spanglish. Spanish was her primary language. But my abuelita, she used to have this phrase, no matter what went wrong, if this woman saw more tragedy in her life than other people would see in 10 lifetimes. But what she would tell us when we struggled and had problems and would face tragedy, her words were, God is too big. God is too big.
I love that. And with your permission, I am going to put that on the Facebook page at some point.
Please do.
I definitely will. Well, again, Skip, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for being just so open and sharing your story. I know you mentioned that you're a pretty private guy. And so for you to share so openly is just beautiful. So I'm honored.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. You guys, that is it for tonight's episode. If you would like to become a financial supporter of this podcast or any of my other podcasts, as a listener supporter, you will have access to listener-only content, to daily inspiration, and you'll know about future guests before anybody else. Go to buymeacoffee.com/this fat girl life. I hope everybody has an amazing night, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.